Good evening, everyone. It is September 23rd, 2014. It is the start of the North Kingstown School Committee business meeting. So if everyone would please rise to say the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier, but if everyone could continue to stand for a moment. We want to remember Mary Brayman, who is a longtime employee here at North Kingstown Schools, who passed away. So if we could take just a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Lorraine, if you could please call the roll.
Linda Avanzano. John Viscarden. Larry Cerisi.
Here.
Cheryl Clarkin.
Here.
Robert Jones.
Here.
William Mudge.
Here.
Kimberly Page.
Here.
Julia Held. Kaya Hoboken. Thank you.
Lorraine, if you could please call the calendars.
Wednesday, October 1st, CELAC meeting, 6 p.m., North Kingstown High School Band Room. Monday, October 13th, Columbus Day, schools and offices closed. Tuesday, October 14th, school committee work session, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School. Thank you.
Just one correction to the calendar. There's been an update on the CELAC meeting. It has actually been changed from the band room to the administration office. So it's the same date and time, just a change in location.
All right. At this time, we have our presentations and recognitions. So I'll go ahead and start with our recognitions. So tonight, we have two things to recognize from the school committee. Tonight is our last time. We will say, Lorraine, please call the roll, as this is the last meeting that she will be with us. But tonight we also get to meet Amy Healy, and she is on our agenda for approval tonight. So if you didn't get to talk to her before the meeting, make sure you say hello, and we will go easy on you at the next meeting, and be very conscious that the system we use is very difficult to first-time learners. So welcome aboard.
I'd also like to recognize a couple of people. First and foremost, I'd like to recognize Dr. Tom Kenworthy. As you all know, Dr. Kenworthy has been the principal of North Kingstown High School for the past 4 years, and his resignation is on our agenda this evening. He will be moving on to be the assistant superintendent in Portsmouth Schools. I've had an excellent relationship with Dr. Kenworthy these past 4 years, and I cannot express how much I think he has done such a tremendous job for this high school. He came at a difficult time, and ever since he has come to the high school, it has progressively scored better. It has achieved great remarks and scores with the NEASC accreditation visit. And, you know, in my view, every piece of any way that you measure a high school, North Kingstown High School has been improving in these past 4 years. In the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about the science scores, and even though they're not out of the embargo yet, the scores there are excellent again. And for the past 4 years, test scores have been improving every year in every category, and that's largely due to his excellent leadership. So I want to thank him publicly for his service to North Kingstown Public Schools these past 4 years, and for the few years that he was here before that, as well as a teacher. I also want to take this opportunity to let the committee know that tonight on the agenda, I am recommending and have full confidence in Dr. Denise Mansiri, who is here this evening. Dr. Mansiri has been a longtime teacher here in our career department and department head, and for the past 2 years has been assistant principal for teaching and learning, for which she has done tremendous work. She has a great relationship with our staff, with our community, most importantly with our kids, and I have full confidence that she's going to be doing a great job as the next principal of North Kingstown High School, at least on an interim basis for the time being. And at the end of the year, we will be doing a full search. That's the best time of the year to do a search for a principal. And she is certainly welcome to apply for the job long-term at that point. So welcome, Dr. Miansiri. I hope all things go well for you tonight on the stage.
So Mr. Cerisi and I were just talking about when to, we know that a couple of things we wanted to bring forward on the agenda, and so we were just talking about bringing them up after the citizens' comments. So,
Okay.
all right, so that brings us to citizens' comments. If you didn't sign up for citizens' comments, you can still come up to the microphone and speak. But it looks like first we have Mr. Mancini.
Yes, Mr. Mancini from 61 Main Street, and John Stamp.
72 Tom Pluck Circle.
So I just wanted to say a couple things real quick. Both our kids are student athletes that play hockey, but you probably know that. But anyways, just want to compliment Dr. Auger on trying to work through some issues. I really do appreciate it, Doctor. Thank you very much. But the real reason why we came up was you have on the agenda a new policy for gift giving for the school or to the school, and we would like to ask the committee to consider a policy for treating all student athletes the same when it comes to funding the sports. And I know it's not going to happen tonight, but at least we wanted to start that conversation. We would also offer our assistance in helping you draft something if you would consider that. And I don't know if, John, you want to add to that?
That says it about all, Greg. Thank you.
So, that's it.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Surely, that would be appreciated. And I'd like to send you what the federal regulations are for donations and so forth and so on. So I'll be in contact with you.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
You'll see that there's a host of rules and regulations that apply, and with donations, who can donate, when they can donate, when the money goes to certain activities and so forth. It's kind of stringent, but I think it's something worthwhile, and you'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Just one question. Would this have any adverse effect on legislative grant type donations, or would
It
that-
could.
Oh, it should.
It could.
Our policy should not, but we can talk about that. We don't usually talk about that at citizens' comments. We'd be
Right.
more than happy to talk to you as the policy subcommittee, and I know your phone number, and you know how we've gotten into contact with each other before, so thanks.
But I'll certainly send along the Department of Education's guidance on the whole
All right,
subject.
so I'm going to remind everybody that this is the citizens' time to talk, and we are to listen.
Anyways, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Change.
Is there any other citizens who would like to to talk to the school committee? All right, seeing no one else, that brings us to the superintendent's report.
Also.
Okay, so that brings us to our routine items of our consent agenda. Did the committee want to bring anything forward to the front of the agenda? I know that Mr. Cerisi, you had said that, yes.
If there are no objections from my colleagues, I'd like to bring forward the, trying to find it on the agenda item, 5A, which is the approval of the general contractor for the Davisville Elementary School upgrades. I believe we have a gentleman here this evening, Mr. Partridge, the architect, who's here to present some information, so maybe we can just move that up to the top of the agenda in order to accommodate them.
So in front of you, you have tonight the request to approve the general contractor for the upgrades at the Davisville Elementary School. We had a really, really big turnout. There are actually more than 20 people at the pre-bid conference. We ended up getting 11 bids that were opened on Friday. Of those bids, the top 3 were sent to you, and the top 1 bid is Tower Construction at $1,244,400. You can see from the bids that they were all very, very, very tight. As a matter of fact, the second highest bid was only $600 higher than the first bid. So you have all of that information in front of you tonight to approve that general contractor. If you have any questions on that, Mr. Partridge from Edward Rouse Architects is here to help with those questions.
All right, so we have an item on the agenda for our approval. Mr. Cerisi.
I know we have some questions and discussions, but just to get the agenda moving, I'd like to make a motion at this time to approve agenda item 5A1.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, so let's make sure that our comments are confined to the item that we're discussing.
I'd like to
Mr.
amend the
Mudge.
motion, please.
Excuse me?
I'd like to amend the motion.
Well, we already have a motion and a second. What is your amendment?
Well, as we look at this, we see there's $600 difference between the two bids. And in fact, if you look at the first 5 bids, it's less than $40,000. I think it would behoove the community to go back and, at least for the first 3 bidders, and ask for a best and final, and we could probably knock that cost down considerably, I would think. So I would think we should consider that.
That is not appropriate in a public bid process.
I defer to legal counsel, but I believe that's illegal.
That would be correct, unless the amount, unless the lowest amount bid is greater than the fiscal ability of the entity to pay for the bid. You cannot negotiate once the bidding process is closed.
All right, so back to the discussion. Yes, Mr. Jones.
Just a legal question on the motion. Considering the town council is funding part of this, are we approving the general contract, or are we approving to send our recommendation of approval to the town council?
Mr. Hennius has a motion that he can read to you that we worked on, because you're approving the contractor with stipulations.
That's correct. That basically you'd be making a motion to approve, but contingent on and subject to the town council approving on their end as well.
So I would go back to my colleagues and ask if we should rephrase the motion?
Yes. So,
I'll make a comment on the motion. Let's follow what the town council resolution said, that the approval request for the funding not to exceed $600,000 for renovations in Davisville Elementary School for the Alternative Learning Center, okay, contingent upon a review of the council of a report and recommendation in the school facility subcommittee on the proposed working cost.
I can comment on that. We had a facilities subcommittee meeting last night in the administration building. The facilities subcommittee recommends that the school committee accept the bid from Tower Construction for $1,244,400.
My point is contingent upon a review by the council of a report and recommendation of the school facility subcommittee. I haven't seen that recommendation or the report.
The recommendation was made last night at the facilities subcommittee meeting. There were plenty of people there to see it. The minutes have not been completed yet. Mr. Mudge, you're just trying to delay something with no validity.
What is the report you're going to give the town council? I'd like to see what the report.
The report says that the facilities subcommittee recommends that the school committee accept the bid for the Davisville Elementary School upgrades from Tower Construction as low bidder for an amount of $1,244,400. There is no other report that needs to be prepared.
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm going to call on Mr. Cerisi.
Well, I have some additional questions.
And I'll
ma'am.
let you get to your, I'm going to let Mr. Cerisi speak.
There'll be plenty of time for questions and comments. We're not trying to rush a vote here. I'm just trying to follow the procedure, that's all. On the advice of legal counsel, I'm going to withdraw my motion and offer a new motion to basically coincide with the wording that Mr. Jones had suggested. So for the record, I'm withdrawing my main motion. Would you withdraw your second?
I withdraw my second.
And my new main motion will be motion to approve the general contractor, Tower Construction, for the DES upgrades, subject to the and contingent upon the town of North Kingstown approving said contractor, as well as upon the mutual agreement of final contract terms.
I'll second that new motion.
since that is written out, why don't we hand that down to Mrs. Berglund to make sure, and Mrs. Healy, so that we can make sure we have that worded correctly. Okay, so now we have a new motion on the table and a second. Are there questions about the motion? Mr. Mudge?
I don't have any questions about the motion, but I have...
And that's all I'm taking right
Excuse
now.
me.
I'm only
I-
taking questions on the motion.
Okay, but I do have questions about the entire process. Thank you.
I'd like your questions confined to the motion.
Do we have enough funds to support this?
It's in my memo. There's $700,000 reserved from the school committee. There's $100,000 in housing aid available from RIDE, and there's $600,000 that's been voted and approved by the town council. That adds up to $1.4 million.
Well, you see, the issue that I have here is, in February of last year, we said that we were going to, the estimate was going to be $975,000 for work on Davisville Elementary School.
I don't know where you got the 975. It was always $1.2 million.
I got it right from you.
No, you didn't.
Well, yes, I certainly did.
No,
I
you
beg
didn't.
your
It's
pardon.
I believe
No, you
that's
did not.
it was sent out to all of us.
It's always been $1.2 million.
1.2.
From a year and a half ago, it was $1.2 million.
In February, yes. But unfortunately, or fortunately, that included $225,000 of technology upgrades needed.
No, it didn't. You're looking at all the wrong numbers. It's always been $1.2 million for DE, always.
It's not correct, and I'll submit this data, which is Mrs. King's report, okay, that we provided, and that's my question, I'll go to the council. We said in the analysis of the alternative living program, North Kingstown School Department, okay, we asked for savings and so forth. It was suggested to us that we would have $1.1 million in savings, okay? And the subtotal for capital upgrades is $1.2 million, and that included technology upgrades of $235,000. So that that was $225,000.
It's part of the $1.2 million.
Oh, yes, that's exactly what I said. My
And that's
point,
that's part of all of this work as well.
So,
It's wiring,
so
everything is part of the $1.2 million.
so this included the wiring.
It does. It's all work that needs to
Okay.
be done by a contractor. Mr. Booth, our
And-
IT supervisor, has worked with Mr. Partridge on all of that.
So that's $1.2 million.
Mr. Cerisi?
Okay, go ahead. So, but in addition to that, we do have another $100,000 that we've had to set aside for this. You've asked for. We've had engineering fees, probably $50,000, that have gone towards this project. So in fact, this thing is called upgrades. Is that correct?
We are here to bid on the contract for the upgrades for tower construction.
Yeah. So,
Again,
I
$1,244,400.
But my point is...
You've already voted on the architectural fees, you've already voted
Nope.
on the program, you've already voted on everything
So
else.
what's the total cost going to be?
$1.4 million.
$1.4 million. So it's, even by your own words, it's going to be $200,000 more than we were told when we started this process.
We started
Okay.
this process a year and a half ago,
Well,
and
we're
the
starting to-
$100,000
Yeah.
that you
$200,000.
approved more money for contingency and for the architectural fees. That's not part of
So
that's
it's
not
well...
part of the upgrades.
It's well
Right.
over the cost.
It's
okay?
not part of the upgrades, Mr. Mudge.
It
Can you
is.
let it go? Just
Great,
let
I'm
it
going to
go.
call Mr.
you,
Cerisi.
please.
This is not
Okay.
a question and answer, this is becoming badgering. So I'm going to
Okay.
call Mr. Cerisi.
Who's badgering
You can formulate your question, and I can come back to you. Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to take a quick pause here for a second, and I wanted to thank Mrs. King and the administration, her team, Mr. Partridge, the facility subcommittee, who are members of our community that volunteered their personal time to be on this facility subcommittee to work with the administration, to work with Mr. Partridge, to make recommendations to the school committee. I think it's very important that we recognize those people. They are not employees of the school districts. They are not compensated for their time at all. They volunteer countless hours to this community, to this school department. They're all professionals in the trade. And I think we don't recognize them enough for the amount of hours that they put in and take away from their businesses and their families just to volunteer their time here. So I'd like to recognize them. I'd like to thank them. They, along with Mrs. King and Mr. Partridge, have followed the process to the T, have followed the letter of the law to the T, and have been guided and worked with our legal counsel, they and the town manager and the town council, straight through this process to make sure I's were dotted and T's were crossed. So, we have been working on this for a long time. Mr. Mudge, you've been opposed to it from the start, and that's fine. You're well within your right to vote yes or no, and you're well within your right to be opposed to something. But I'm not going to sit here and allow this badgering to continue and muddying of the waters and muddying of the facts for somebody's own personal gain. So I'd like to stick to the facts of the conversation. This information has been before us for almost a year. This process has been before us for almost a year. Members of this school committee and members of the public were encouraged yesterday to attend the facility subcommittee meeting yesterday, which Mr. Partridge was at, which Mrs. King was at, to look at any documents that they wanted to look at, to ask any questions they wanted to ask, to get the detailed information to any questions they have. You were not in attendance.
Who was in attendance from the school committee? Who was in attendance from the school committee?
This is the opportunity.
Who was in attendance from the school
All right, so
committee?
Mr. Cerisi has the floor.
Oh, you
This
could
is,
answer
this
that.
is an opportunity for the committee to ask questions. They could have talked to Mr. Partridge, Mrs. King, the superintendent, at any time to ask these questions.
I did. I tried to get
find
documents, and they wouldn't give them to me.
I find it totally incomprehensible why tonight, 5 minutes to midnight, we want to start the badgering and the inquisition. I mean, it's pretty clear what the purpose is.
Yeah, the purpose is,
You-
I
if you'd
asked for
like to-
documents to
He has
review
the
this, and
floor.
was denied the
Mr.
documents.
Cerisi has the floor.
Okay?
If you'd like to vote no, you simply vote no.
Did you attend the meeting, Mr. Cerisi?
I have had all the questions I have had answered by Mrs. King.
how many
Every
school-
question that I've had, I've asked of Mrs. King, I've asked of Mr. Partridge, or I've asked of legal counsel. I have no questions. I've reviewed the material that was made available to me.
Mr. Biscardin is the school committee liaison on the facilities subcommittee, and he was not in attendance at the meeting last night, but I've been in contact with him. He's been at all the other meetings. Mr. McKay from the town council was at our meeting last night. Mr. Welch from our town council was at the meeting last night as well. Mr. Mudge, you were told that if you wanted to view those documents on site, you were welcome to make an appointment with the school committee clerk in order to do
I
so.
did not. I
You
had to
did
come
not
in.
do so.
Why couldn't I get the documents?
Because it is a violation of security for those plant floor layouts to be given out. We are no
That's
longer required
false,
to
and
do
you
that.
know it.
No,
You-
it is
you-
not false.
it
Why
is
don't you
false.
contact the
All
Attorney
right.
General's office,
It
too?
is. It is. That's false.
If I could just finish my comments, I'd like to make a motion at this time to end debate and call the question,
No,
please.
we haven't ended all this.
Do I have a second?
Okay? We,
All right, so I
excuse
have a
me.
motion on
Good
the
luck.
floor to
Point
end
of order.
debate. No.
Point of order.
No.
Point of order.
And your
Point
point-
of order. We're saying that
A motion on the floor to end debate trumps.
we said that we were going to get state aid for this.
Ms. Berger?
We're not going to get state aid.
Please call the question
Okay.
for the motion on the floor to end debate.
How can you sit there,
Debate.
two
Larry
lawyers
Cerisi.
sit there and watch something go over like this
Mr. Mudge,
without
we have a
following-
motion on the floor.
without-
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and it has been seconded. So right now, we are following parliamentary procedure, as we should, and we are taking the vote. So,
Department of Education approve this? Did the Department of Education
Mudge.
approve this?
Mr. Mudge, I'm going to ask you to, okay, Mr. Mudge, it is not your turn to speak. It is Ms. Berglund's turn to speak. Okay,
Finish calling the roll.
let Mrs. Berglund call the question.
It's to show the Department of Education approved this program.
Jones.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
William Mudge.
Absolutely not.
Motion passes. We will now call the question. Ms. Berglund, if you could please read the motion again, and then we will take a roll call vote.
The motion is to approve the general contractor Urbane Construction for the Davisville Elementary.
Tower construction, Maureen?
Tower construction, sorry, for the Davisville Elementary upgrades, subject to and contingent upon the town of North Kingstown approving said general contractor as well and upon mutual agreement of final contract terms.
Oh, okay, thanks. All right, so if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
Cheryl Clarkin.
Yes.
Robert Jones.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No, we're not complying with
All right.
Rhode
that's all you
Island
need
general
is
law.
Yes or no?
Kimberly Page.
No.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Partridge. Thank you, Mrs. King.
Isn't that nice?
All right, that brings us back to our consent agenda.
Excuse me? What'd you say?
I said nicer than you because I heard what you just said.
All right, so this is, coming back to the consent agenda.
Embarrassment. I'm an embarrassment.
All right.
You?
All
You
right,
and I'm an
folks,
embarrassment, Larry
let's
Cerisi?
remember our decorum
All the things
here.
that went on with you?
We're in front of an audience. We are asked to act in a professional manner. I would just ask that everyone remember that. So we are back to
Domestic
the
violence?
consent agenda. So is there anything that needs to be exempted from the consent agenda? Mr. Jones.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to exempt C2, just for a comment. That's it.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay, duly noted. All right, so that brings us to C2, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. I'd make a motion to approve C2.
Second.
Thank you. My comment on C2 is not any objection to the bid or the contractor. It's merely to raise awareness that this is 16,000 unplanned, I believe, Mrs. King. And it's, again, going to be representative that we have buildings absent the high school that are on average getting between 50 to 70 years old. And I would again implore both this committee and the town council, either through the asset management or some other body, to start a long-term planning, and by long-term, really, it's somewhat short-term, but facilities, master plan facilities, because these 16,000s are just harbingers of 20 and 50,000s that will be coming down the road that will consume our resources if we don't think about now how we're going to structure our education facilities, given our projected demographics and enrollment over the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. That's a good point in that I know that Tim Duffy has been talking about how are we going to take care of our buildings that are so old within the state. Mrs. Clarkin.
I just want to say that I completely agree with Mr. Jones's comment, and we really have to be forward-thinking, because I don't care how much money we have to keep dumping into these buildings, it's never going to be enough. So we really need a short, long-term plan going forward as to how we're going to maintain the buildings we have or somehow create a different environment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor of approving C2, say aye. Aye.
No.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries. That doesn't mean that since we've passed the rest of our consent agenda, that we have hired 2 new employees. One, welcome Mrs. Healy to the school committee, Thank you very much for coming into this job.
And welcome Dr. Mansieri, the new principal of North Kingstown High School. Congratulations.
So if we'd like to shake hands, so if we could take a brief recess, if the committee if I could get a motion to do that so that we could welcome people.
Motion to take a brief recess.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, are we ready, Connor? Okay, thank you. All right, so we are back, folks. Thank you for allowing us to take that brief recess. So at the end of our consent agenda, that brings us to two of the policies that we have here. The first one is a second read of the donations policy, which we did make sure that we had our legal counsel take a look at, and they said that this looked good, that we were ready to go with this. I don't know if there's any further questions about the donations policy. I realize, Mr. Mudge, that you feel as if it needs to satisfy certain protocol, but our legal counsel has assured us that this policy is in full compliance with Rhode Island law, with the town ordinance, that we are fine. Mr. Streese.
What about, did he?
I called him Mr. Streese first.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'd like to offer a motion to approve this policy at this time.
Second.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor and a second. Further discussion, Mr. Mudge?
Did the council give us a written evaluation of what his recommendation was? I'd like to get that, please. Number one. Number two, did the council review the Department of Education's report based on GASB regulations regarding the handling of grants, donations, gifts, and so forth and so on? And were the recommendations that were put out, promulgated by the Department of Education, were they included in this policy?
Well, have you read the policy, Mr. Mudge?
Yes, and the answer is no. So I want just for council's benefit, I don't want to, it's a new gentleman here tonight, I don't want to catch him off guard, but my question was, were we going to look at that policy, okay, the one that the Department of Education has put out? I gave you 6 years ago, I gave this committee several times, and which was apparently, I think, the Bible as far as the government's concerned, and used throughout this country, and pretty well addresses all the particular and potential issues that may come up between gifts, grants, amounts of money, who owns what money, including extracurricular activities, funding, the fiduciary responsibilities for the school committee, and the responsibilities to appropriate and spend any gifts and so forth and so on. Now, those are all outlined in that document. And I find little or no guidance that was provided by the Department of Education in that manual I gave you some time ago. And I feel it should be. And I'd like to know why that wasn't considered.
I don't know if our council considered that or not, but our council assured us that the policy that we have here before us is in full compliance with town, state, and federal law.
Well,
so that I would seem to say, while it is what we need.
Well, I'd given the copy to you and asked you to review it. Did you review the document?
I reviewed the policy.
Did you review the federal guidelines? Department of Education?
That doesn't have anything to do with this.
Are you talking about the town council?
Our attorney assured us that what we're doing is the right thing to do, so that's good enough for me.
My issue is that the Department of Education puts out guidance on handling all of these things based on all applicable GASB regulations.
I'm telling you that our attorney assured us that
And I gave you a copy of
Would you
that.
like me to answer, Mr.
I gave
President?
you a copy to look at that. Did you look at that yourself? You're an attorney.
I am not the attorney of the school committee.
Yeah.
So
But
I do
you're
not
on the
operate
policy
in that-
committee.
do not operate in
And
that
you were
capacity.
asked-
Mr. Mudge, would you like me to answer your questions?
Yes.
Or are you going to talk over me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So I do not operate in the capacity of the school committee attorney. So when I am given things, I pass them on to our own attorneys who review things. And they have assured me that we are in compliance with the Department of Education, with federal, state, and local law. So in that way, I am satisfied.
Now, I asked you to review that some time ago. Did you review it
You have not given me anything within the last year to review.
within the last year? How about 2 years ago?
I don't
Yeah.
know, Mr.
And
Mudge.
you refused to look at it.
No, Mr. Mudge,
Yes.
if you've given me something, I have looked at it.
Yeah. So you never looked at this policy then?
Motion to end debate, call a question, please.
Such unethical
All
conduct.
right, so we have a motion on the floor to end debate. Ms. Berglund, could you take a roll call?
Jesus.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
Cheryl Clarkin.
Yes.
Robert Jones.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No, of course not.
Okay, motion passes. Ms. Berglund, if you could take a roll call vote on the motion for the, and if you could read that back to us, please.
Cheryl Clarkin.
Yes.
Robert Jones.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No?
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right, so that is KCD. The next policy we have on our agenda is just a first read only, so that is not for approval here tonight. This is a new policy to codify some of the things that we did not have written down before, and to make sure that some of our grant employees under the Office of Family Learning were making sure that they followed the same guidelines as all the rest of our employees throughout the district. And I'm actually going to defer to Mrs. King if there's any particular questions about the policy that people would like to discuss. So open that up. This would just be the first read for tonight, so there won't be any motion, it's just for the read. But if there's any amendments or changes that need to be made, that should be discussed now. Mr. Cerisi.
I have a question, just a quick comment. I'd just like to thank the Policy Subcommittee and Mrs. King for working on this policy. I know we have, obviously, our two biggest groups here, teachers and support staff, are covered, their benefits and salaries are covered in the collective bargaining agreement contracts that we have with them. But there are several smaller, very small outlying groups who are not covered under contracts and are more so covered on the policies. And no fault of anyone's, but just over the years, there's just been some loose ends out there that we need to pull together and tidy up on. And I know this is something that's being worked on by the administration and the policy subcommittee, so I'd just like to thank them for recognizing that and starting to pull these things together, so, thank you.
Mr. Jones and then Mr. Mudge.
Thank you. Most of the questions I had were answered, so maybe more along the lines of Mr. Cerisi. Anytime we sort of dump, maybe that's not the right, or anytime we add sort of a change sort of midstream in the fiscal year, and I know the superintendent has mentioned he's going to come back and discuss sort of the OFL configuration. I would just suggest that sort of the merger of that plus this policy that, at some point, when the superintendent recommends that the committee maybe get a more comprehensive look on the OFL structure and then the impacts of this policy and then sort of merged with the current fiscal year budget, so we get a holistic view now of how this is coming together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mudge.
I'm questioning the need for this because, we have this Office of Family Planning.
Learning.
I beg your pardon. Should be planning, I guess. Did we approve that office?
It's the COSI group. It's just they have changed their name from being Child Opportunity Zone to Office of Family Learning. They did that about a year and a half ago. So they had, when they came, last time they came to do a presentation in front of us, they showed us their new logo, they showed us their new name. So it's easy to forget because we don't see them all the time, but we were advised of the changes.
So this COSI group, isn't this just an independent group then? That's funded by the federal government?
They're all under our school district. We approve their budget. We approve who they hire. We approve their salaries and benefits. So, no, they're not independent. They're employees. It's just this is more of making sure that there is some sort of a set group of how their benefits and everything are versus before it wasn't quite as structured.
Then, but their funding is not from the school department and the taxpayers, it's from the federal government, by grant.
It's from the taxpayers, just maybe not from the North Kingstown taxpayers.
So it's federal granted money.
It's tied to the North Kingstown School Department.
Right. Now,
Sometimes it's state. It all depends. I mean, it may be state, it may be federal. That's why I hesitate, and I don't want to say that everybody is federal.
well, what differentiates what their salary should be and so forth and so on than anybody else that works under a grant? There's Title I, Title II, and so forth and so on.
This money, I mean, this policy will not take any money from the regular budget nor give them any more money. It is just codifying how the money is parceled out to be a little more stricter in saying this will go to benefits, this will go into the MERS retirement program, and some of the things that we did not have codified before.
I guess I don't know the distinction here because, we have Title I, Title II programs that are federal grant programs, and we don't have specific guidance on what those folks are going to be paid.
Yes, you do, because if you have teachers that are Title I, they are under our teacher's contract. That's the
Sure,
point.
yeah,
These
right.
employees are under grants, but they're not under a contract or a policy or whatnot. So those other employees that are being paid by grants are under a policy or a contract. That's the difference.
What distinguishes is one grant from another grant? I don't understand that, why we have to have a specific role for one specific grant. We get probably get 8 or 9 big grants anyway, Title I, Title II, all the other good stuff. We don't have specific pays, rates for all of those folks.
Well, you really shouldn't be looking at it like that because it really, to the employees, should be seamless. It really does not matter from what source of funds an employee is paid from. That is in the budget, and we make sure that's all reported and all of the grants are properly tracked. But an employee of the district is an employee of a district of the district is an employee of the district.
Sure, I agree with
and
that.
this group didn't fall under anything like Mr. Mudge, we are part of GCB. So we have guidelines as to what our benefits are and our vacation time and our sick time. And as Mr. Cerisi said, this group was an outlier that didn't really have that, but should have a policy that they follow because they are employees of the district no matter how they're funded.
Mrs. Clarkin.
I just have to make a comment here. All of us have questions when this agenda comes out. We're giving the agenda on Thursday. On Friday, Dr. Auger sends out his narrative. If we have any questions regarding anything on the agenda, including policies, then it's up to us to do our due diligence, get in touch with Phil, call him, speak with him about the issues we have. I personally met with him and Mary on Friday morning. I know Mr. Jones met with him, and I know Ms. Page and Mr. Cerisi met with him. It's very frustrating to sit up here, Mr. Mudge, when you don't take the time to go and meet or call him and get these questions answered ahead of time. Because I feel as if we're just wasting everyone's time. I understand you have valid questions, but the time to ask those questions and get some of your answers was before we're sitting here on the stage.
God forbid we allow the public to know what some of our questions are. Now, you said
public
four
is given
people.
the agenda as well.
Four people went in. You just said four people went in and discussed these questions with Dr.
No, any questions we had. The public
that's
is
a
also
violation
entitled to
of
come up
the open
and speak
meetings
at
law.
citizens' comments with any questions they have. It's a public record.
That's a violation of open meetings law. You're going in four people.
Everything,
Okay?
and you cause problems on every
Doesn't have to
single
be at the same
agenda
time.
item, and I'm really tired of it. Okay, my kids are at home, and I should be home with them, but instead, I'm here for an extra hour because I have to listen to you
You
go
don't
on
want
and
to tell
on
the
and on
public
and
what
on.
our issues are?
Everyone
our
knows
questions
what the
are?
issues
No,
are,
they
Bill.
don't.
Yes, we have valid discussion, but you side road everything. and
No,
I'm
the
just
fact of the
frustrated
matter
by
is,
it, and I'm
what
allowed
we're
to
doing is
speak my
all the
piece.
business is
Thank
being
you.
done behind the scenes, okay?
All right, so we're here to talk about this policy, and
Finally, I just have one more question then.
Ms. Hodge.
You said we passed the budget. We have never passed the cozy budget. It's never been presented to
It's
us.
part of your grants. It's all in the grants.
It's-
It's in
we have
Title
never passed
I,
the grant budget.
It's in ID8. No, you haven't passed an individual specific one, but that's why they're all merged in with all the grants,
We
Mr.
have no
Mudge, and
oversight of the
hence why they-
individual grants.
all right,
We
so
have
now
not passed the
we're
grants.
getting a little,
you have.
folks, we're getting a
Absolutely
little off
not.
track of the proposed policy, so I'm going to bring us back to looking at if there's any other questions about GCB 2.
No further questions.
All right.
Did anybody answer the question, did we approve the grants this year?
That's
Town-
already,
the
that
town
has
council
been
did.
answered, and we've told you yes, and you disagree. So that brings us to policy number 3 that we have, ILC, which is our kneecap policy. Since we no longer are going to be doing the kneecap test, the proposal from the policy committee was that we delete this policy. So,
Motion to delete policy.
Second.
okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there anybody who does not want to delete this policy for some reason?
Well, I'd
Yes,
just
Mr.
like to just clarify for the public comment, when we say we're not going to use the kneecap scores, we're not going, maybe let Dr. Humbert or something, I mean, we're still going to give some kneecap tests, right? And I mean, we use the scores for assessment and other purposes. We're not going to use it as a graduation requirement till such time as RIDE or the General Assembly.
Right.
Okay.
So we're not using the mathematics and English language arts components of the kneecap at all. The only remaining use of the kneecap is for science kneecap. And the graduation requirements that are, and let me just backtrack for a minute, and just so everybody's clear, that the state testing is being replaced by the PARCC assessment, and that is operational this year. And the graduation requirements are being revised at this point.
Thank you.
And the policy is particular to just the English and math kneecap. So that's just to further clarify that it wasn't, the policy did not deal with the science kneecap. Mr. Mudge?
With respect to this, I brought this up before, and I think the answer was no. Our homeschool kids, they're not required to take the kneecap or the POC test?
No.
You are correct, they are not required.
That's just amazing to me. In this world of education, you can have, kids that we're supposed to be responsible for to make sure they get a good education and everything else, okay, being homeschooled, yet they don't have to take the same tests that our kids do. How do we know that they're being educated?
Mr.
And I
Jones.
don't want to belabor this more, but just to follow up on Mr. Mudge's point, Dr. Humbert, do we offer the opportunity for homeschool children to come in and take the kneecap as just an assessment tool for the parents?
Yes, they are allowed to, but they're not required to.
Right. Do any actually take advantage of that?
I have had in my administrative experience, I have had people do that.
The only reason I, of course, bring that up is, if you've got 40, 50 kids in there in school, maybe 10 or 15 kids, and you look at throughout the state, and you find out, it'd be interesting to find out how the kids that are homeschooled are doing compared to the kids that aren't homeschooled. That would be a very good,
It'd be a good source of data, but we don't have that.
yeah.
Right, I
it's
mean,
too
sometimes
bad.
we have problems getting information from the homeschoolers, I mean, including age or birth dates, I mean, we get a name, and even that can be problematic at times. So the homeschooling group, and this isn't all, but sometimes they want to be taken off the grid, so off of the assessments and everything else, so. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Mr. Jones?
I'm sorry, yeah, do we have a
Yeah.
motion? Yes, sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to delete policy ILC. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Jones?
Thank you. And I don't want to cut you off the next motion is to adjourn. It'll be brief, and I know we don't normally talk about reports, and I don't wish to talk about reports, but I would indulge the committee for 15 seconds that I ask the superintendent that items B1 and B2 be carried forward in the next agenda packet.
It will be.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
All right, I have some
Second.
correspondence I'd like to discuss.
We're not going to be discussing reports.
I didn't say reports, I said correspondence.
We don't discuss correspondence. It's under
Thank you.
reports. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries.